Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and you already know the drill. We've got a Game 7 to talk about today. And Logan, as has been the case in a few Game 7s as of late, this one is a blowout. There is no dramatic finish. It is the Oklahoma City Thunder show. They demolish the Denver Nuggets and advance to the Western Conference Finals as they continue their effort to become the youngest NBA champion in almost 50 years. How did they get it done in this one? And what do you take away from this performance from OKC, Logan?
It was the defense stepping up. I mean, that's the biggest thing about this game more than anything else. I could be critical of Denver. I do think they were careless and reckless with the ball. Like, I think there are a lot of really ugly and just uncoordinated turnovers, but you got to give the OKC defense a ton of credit for just how physical they were. The ball pressure throughout this game, the ability to limit just easy passes inside to Jokic, where I think you got to give a shout out to a guy like Alex Caruso, who was just phenomenal in this game. But it's just a collective defense, and then their ability really easily to turn that defense into offense. And I saw a lot of people early on in this game talking about, Oklahoma City's really lucky to be only down this in this game. And I didn't feel that way at all. Like, I thought that the Nuggets were kind of lucky that Oklahoma City was missing so many open threes, because they were giving credit to the Denver zone early in this game. And I thought, Denver's doing a pretty good job. But I more so thought OKC was just missing open shots that they should have been hitting. And at a point in this game, in the second quarter, Oklahoma City just flips this switch defensively where they are applying immense ball pressure. They are getting out on fast breaks and getting easy points, and they just didn't let up. It was like this pressure was just building in this pipe, and eventually Oklahoma City just busted through with their defense, and Denver just couldn't hang. I mean, that was the difference to me. I thought SGA played a really good game as well, and I think he has steadily improved throughout this season. I thought he was the best player in this series end to end, more than Jokic, even though Jokic had some really great performances. I thought Jokic had the higher peak, but I thought SGA was more consistent down the stretch. I thought Jokic played below his best in the world standard in this series. Now, granted, it is in some pretty extreme circumstances with the defense that Oklahoma City was throwing at them, but I thought SGA overall was the best player in this series. And it's a big it's a big bounce back game for J-Dub too. I got to give him credit. Coming into this game, J-Dub was giving you 17 points per game on 45% true shooting. That's down 5 points in 12% from the regular season. And the numbers were kind of staggering in this game where he had struggled. Carson, he was down 25% in the restricted area in this series from the regular season. He was down 19% in the mid-range from the regular season in this series. And he was down 15% from behind the arc in this series from the regular season. But he did a really good job of, and I want to give him credit in this series too. The scoring was off, but I thought you got really high impact from J-Dub in other areas. But in this game, you kind of get everything, and a lot of it was in transition, where I thought he did a really good job of just getting out on the break and getting easy points. I mean, I think he scored 17 points in the second quarter, and so shout out to him for bouncing back. Shout out to the OKC supporting cast finally finding their stroke in this one. I thought a lot of the areas where they struggled bounced back in a big way, and I feel a little foolish, Carson. I mean, the one thing that I had the most confidence, I feel like, coming into this series was this defense. And I bet against them in this Game 7. And that, I thought, was the biggest component to this dominant Oklahoma City win.
It absolutely was the defense. They showed up at such a special level in this game, and they're capable of doing that because this is one of the greatest defenses that we've ever seen. I've been saying for a while, I think it's the best defense since the '04 Pistons, and they have the resume to support that, man. This was a top 10 relative defense by defensive rating in modern league history this regular season, and that was without their best defender, Chet Holmgren, for most of the year. But I've consistently said this is the best group of perimeter defenders in terms of their depth that I have ever seen. They have four flat out all defense, no ifs, ands, or buts, caliber guards and wings with Alex Caruso, who's the best defensive guard on the planet, Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams. And then they also have one of the best pure rim protectors of this century in Chet Holmgren, the ability that they have to pressure the ball, to fly around and force teams into mistakes on the perimeter, to rotate with such overwhelming speed, and that you have this insane backline defense and rim protection from an individual like Chet and from their collective speed and length and athleticism on the interior. It just makes them one of the greatest defenses that we've ever seen. They averaged the most steals per game this season that we had seen by any defense since the 90s. And they also held opposing offenses to the worst efficiency inside of 10 feet by far. So it's the fastest defense I've ever seen. It's the best defense I've ever seen at forcing opponent mistakes. And they have this top tier rim protection, and their versatility is just unbelievable as well. We have seen them throw so many different looks at Jokic. We know they can go double big and be dominant. They can go Chet at the 5 and be dominant. They can go Ihart at the 5 without Chet and be dominant. But for a sizable stretch of this game in the second quarter, when both Ihart and Chet have 2 fouls, they went up against, in my opinion, the best offensive player ever, who is a 280-pound center with a small ball lineup, with Alex Caruso as his primary defender, and they gave him a lot of trouble with that look. And you can criticize Denver's ability to throw entry passes, where I thought they made a lot of poor passes and they were a little sloppy. But OKC just did such a great job of challenging every pass, pressuring the ball, challenging every catch, blindsiding Jokic off the catch. And they just generated so many steals in this game. They're averaging the most steals per game in these playoffs now of any team to play at least 10 games in the postseason since the 1970s, man. It is just chaos at a level that we have not seen in decades.
Can I ask you, is that a pace related? Is that interrelated with pace? Like
the reason that it's been that long?
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, 70s pace was high, and also teams were just worse at taking care of the basketball. I talked about this in the video I did where I watched a game from every decade, but the 75 finals, it was turnover central. So to do it in this era, when teams are actually better at limiting turnovers than ever before, makes that number even more impressive and makes me comfortable saying, in terms of their ability to force turnovers, considering competition, they're the best that we've seen. So they gave Jokic fits in this series in a way I have never seen before. They did it in so many different ways, but in this game, a lot of it started with Alex Caruso, who's just a one-of-a-kind defender, and I do think in a lot of ways is the hero of this game. OKC obviously dominated. They win by more than 30, so there were a lot of dudes who stepped up and played at a really high level, but I did say, Logan, I tweeted this out. I said this when our friends over at Thunder Chets asked for our pre-game predictions. I said, I think we're going to get a Caruso masterclass. He is just the ultimate big game championship kind of player, and he showed up in such a big way. His ability to front Jokic, harass him, pressure him, and then blow things up all over the floor and just wreak havoc is so special. There's no other guard who does it at that level in the NBA today. I do think that he is not just the best guard defender alive. He is having one of the best individual postseasons I can think of. And so he was empowering them to pull away on the defensive end. And that's where they really did separate themselves in this game, with their ability to turn defense into offense, get out in transition, and dominate in the paint. A lot of that did come out in the full court. But if you just look at the few categories, Logan, where OKC was on a totally different level, they go plus 13 in the turnover margin. They go plus 30 in terms of points off of turnovers. I can't think of a time I've seen a number that big. They go double Denver in fast break points, and they have 22 more points in the paint. So as you said, early in this game, it felt like, man, once you're midway through the second quarter, like OKC probably should have built a more sizable lead than they had. And then they really pull away at the end of the second quarter with that 18-5 run to close out the half. A lot of that is forcing 3 turnovers in the last 2 minutes. They're just one of a kind in their ability to score off of those turnovers. We talked about it time and again. That's what sets them apart even from other great defenses, that ability to turn defense into offense. But then the offense also started going in its own right in that stretch. J-Dub steps into a big 3 versus the zone and hits it. Shai nails a pull-up 3. And all of a sudden, it was just like the floodgates open because they had been doing a lot right. They had been dominating in the paint and doing a great job of cutting versus the zone. They'd been defending well. They'd been really active on the offensive glass. They actually had more offensive rebounds than Denver in the first half. They had just been missing lots of open threes. which was disappointing from OKC, but not shocking just because we've seen inconsistencies there from them this series. And there are just so many nerves in a moment like this for a young team. How do you mitigate nerves? You bludgeon the opposing team. You set the tone with your physicality and your activity on the defensive end, and you get yourself easy offense off of it around the rim, where it doesn't matter if you're nervous. You're just getting great, very high percentage shots.
Mm-hmm.
They just hit Denver with a punch that they couldn't handle, and honestly, I don't think anybody in the league could handle, and they really pulled away decisively. It does start with the defense. I do want to rain praise upon the Stars, but it's one of the best defenses we've ever seen, Logan, and this is their masterpiece, man.
And I thought Denver did a really good job of that in the first quarter. That's what was so surprising about this game, because I thought Denver's zone was really stifling. I thought Denver did a good job of being the aggressive team, getting downhill, getting to the free throw line, and I thought that was going to be a big difference. And then immediately, the tide really swung when Jokic came off the floor at the top of the second quarter. I mean, I really felt like the momentum just flipped on its head. Like Denver was rolling, they had something good going, and I didn't like that decision from Adelman to not have Murray or Jokic out there at the beginning of the second quarter, because I just thought in a moment like this, and I get it, you want both of these guys to get a little bit of a rest before they lock back in. In a minute and 2 seconds of game time with no Murray and Jokic, they rattle off 6 points straight to take the lead, and then J-Dub misses a free throw. Strother immediately gives the ball away on a bad turnover to Russell Westbrook, and J-Dub gets another layup. So that's an 8-0 run without Jokic, where I just felt like you needed a stabilizer. And obviously that's not like the most important. I thought the most important stretch of this game was at the end of the second quarter, but that felt like a really big part of the game where Denver had control, and immediately it just flipped on its head.
You look at a 32-point game, and the lead was even bigger than that at some points, and you think you can't really focus on a stretch like that too much, but at the same time, Logan, I agree. I think that was one of the most pivotal parts of this game. OKC, they just were so comfortable and in rhythm late in that second quarter and in that third quarter. Maybe they were going to open this game up no matter what. They're just the better team. They have been the better team throughout this series. They've always had the more margin. They've always had the more talent. But like you said, that OKC offense was looking tight. And when you take both Murray and Jokic off the floor, you give them an incredible opportunity to find a rhythm, to start turning defense into offense, because Julian Strother just is not ready to replicate what he did in game 6, obviously, and he looks overwhelmed. I thought that was an important stretch to build OKC's confidence, and I also thought it was just a disastrous decision from Adelman. I truly don't know what he's thinking. Like, the groups that Denver trotted out with both Murray and Jokic off this regular season had a negative 24 net rating. Because we talk about the Nuggets are amazing in the Jokic minutes, they're awful in the non-Jokic minutes. And that is true. But in the Murray on Jokic off minutes, they're just like regular below average. They're not a disaster. It's when they play with both of them off the floor that they are a completely incompetent basketball team. They had only played 4 minutes in the entire postseason with those guys off the floor. I think it was one stretch against the Clippers. And when he did it then, I was like, what are you doing? I didn't think we'd see a single minute of this in the playoffs. To do it in game 7, when you're thinking both of our stars are going to play 44, 45 minutes anyways, I just couldn't wrap my head around that decision. So no, it's not the difference in this game, but it gave OKC an opportunity to get some momentum. And then from there, they were just a freight train that couldn't be slowed down.
The word I would use is it gave him an edge. Like, I just think that at that point, Denver had control of the game. They were working late into the shot clock. Their defense was working on the other end. They were kind of forcing OKC to shoot early shot clock threes. They were getting out on the break a little bit. I just thought their process was really good, and I get that you need to give Jokic a rest. I get that you want Murray and them to be fresh, but like you said, confidence. I think it gave them the, all right, fine, we'll go on a little bit of a run. And after that, they just didn't look back. Like you said, the floodgates opened up, and they just kept coming. And then it was just like an avalanche where you just feel like Denver doesn't have control of this game, and they are scrambling, clawing, trying to get back in, and it's over. They are, effectively in that quicksand where they just keep getting dragged further and further down, and they can't get back into it. And I do want to give OKC more credit, too, because I thought their game plan was really, really excellent in how they executed it against Nikola Jokic. And what I mean by that is, one, having Caruso on ball, props to him and how disruptive he was individually on Jokic. You can't stress that enough. He's not letting them get those immediate entry passes into them. And then even if they are getting those entry passes on the second pass, where I thought Christian Brown did a really good job of noticing opportunities where they did have that mismatch and Jokic had position on the post. When they do get the ball into Jokic on the post, Oklahoma City did a really good job of collapsing and having three guys in there just, punching at the ball and making it hard. And even if they're sending him to the line, they're not letting Jokic get those easy layups or easy opportunities without having to deal with all that physical contact under the rim. And the reason I think that is so important is because Oklahoma City wasn't afraid of the supporting pieces. The reason that Oklahoma City is able to implement that strategy and not get burnt for it is because they don't fear the shooting around Denver. You're okay, even though Christian Brown did a really good job cutting and making threes. You're not afraid of him. The level that MPJ and Murray have been at, you're not afraid of them. The level that Aaron Gordon is at with his hamstring injury and Russell Westbrook, it's like the guys around Jokic just couldn't make them pay for that overly aggressive, tactic, and that's really the correct strategy to implement. And I thought they did a phenomenal job all game because Caruso's going to get the praise, and I think rightfully so, and J-Dub's going to get a lot of credit. But specifically, that team effort, if it's Dort, if it's Caruso, if it's Hartenstein, those backline guys, I thought did a really phenomenal job of collapsing and selling out on Jokic. And I just thought their strategy and their plan was executed to perfection in this one.
Absolutely. All series long. I mean, regardless of who Jokic's primary defender was, they were almost never going to let him get a one-on-one look because when he did have those opportunities, he was very successful. They don't have anybody who can actually guard him one-on-one, but they have dudes who can make it really difficult for him to complete his catch. They have dudes who can really pester him, and then they're going to double the shit out of him. I mean, we saw them bring so many baseline doubles throughout this series. We saw them so many times over and over again bring that extreme physicality and involve a second defender with active hands and load up on Jokic so aggressively. And as you said, the guys around him just were not able to punish them for that strategy consistently enough. So they did really frustrate Jokic. The last couple games 5 and 6, I thought Jokic was really excellent, but this one was closer to what we saw from him in games 2 through 4. I didn't think that Jokic was bad in this game, honestly. I thought it was more so a failure of the guys around him, but Jokic was not able to overcome this defense and deliver the sort of performance that Denver would have needed if they wanted any chance to win this one. And on the flip side, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was excellent. And in the last 3 games of this series, I was just wildly impressed by how in control of every game he was, how comfortable he was against a defense that earlier in the series gave him some trouble with the zone. And they were able to force him into some questionable shots, and he wasn't consistently making the right decisions and anticipating the coverages and moving off the ball quickly to create for teammates. The last 3 games, I mean, he just did everything right. He gives you 33 points and 6 assists per game on 71% true shooting. Extremely efficient as a scorer, obviously. Effortlessly getting to the mid-range in this game. And those shots truly do feel like layups for him, man. He was so nails from those elbows, 12, 15 footers from the baseline in the second half of this series. And then he also found the step back 3, and that was a weapon that he got going that also was off for him earlier in this playoff run. The scoring numbers are dazzling and outstanding, but also I thought that his playmaking was better than the stats would show.
100%, man, 100%.
Like, he created great shot after great shot for his teammates in the last 3 games, and really especially in this one, even though he doesn't have the big assist numbers, like, he's getting into the teeth of the defense and he's kicking out. And even if OKC didn't make every one of them, he's getting you so many good looks from 3. He did a much better job spotting cutters as the series went along. I just thought he was outstanding in these last 3 games. It is so encouraging because I saw a lot of discourse about, SGA is a playoff drop or SGA is not holding up in the same way. And then I thought this was clearly the best postseason stretch of his young career. This is the SGA I expected from the regular season. One of the best guards we've ever seen, a guy who I have called a top 3 guard peak in this century. That's what you got out of him in games 5 through 7 of this series. And it's exactly what OKC needed. It's an interesting point you said about him being the best player in this series.
The reason that I say that is, I mean, I just think we got 4 games in this series from Jokic where I thought he was below his best in the world standard, but I would say we had 3 bad games by Jokic standards. Game 1, I thought was his down game, but I mean, he still gives you a 40 piece. So I'm not as much concerned about that. He has more turnovers than assists in that one. It wasn't
Right.
a great Jokic game, but he does give you
Mm,
40. But I thought
It
two
was a
through
pretty awesome
four.
game. I mean, 18 points in the fourth quarter, 41, 22, and
Look,
6.
I'm not as
It
I'm
was a
not
great game.
semantics. I'm not as worried. I already
Okay.
said I'm not as worried about that one as much as the other ones that I want to talk about. 2 through 4 were bad Jokic games,
Yep.
and I thought specifically in Game 4 or Game 5, I thought they had to step up a little bit more. The supporting cast, excuse me. I thought Game 5 had to step up more because I thought Jokic was good in that one, but Game 4, I thought they had to. I thought Jokic had to be better. He goes 7 of 22 from the field, 2 of 8 from deep. Game 3, he goes 8 turnovers, 0 of 10 from deep, 8 of 25 from the field. In Game 2, 6 turnovers, 6 of 16 from the field. The supporting cast, I thought from Denver's perspective, in Game 3 stepped up and did their job, but it just wasn't fully all there. I do want to give credit to Aaron Gordon. I thought Aaron Gordon was an absolute superhero in these playoffs.
Hold on. Can we have this conversation? I want to talk about who was the best player in
Well,
this series. I think it's very interesting. Do you think it's clear, SGA?
I think in the last 4 games, I thought SGA was better, and I thought that was more important.
So let's break it down. I think that I agree. I think that SGA was by a slight margin the best player in this series. He gives you 4 awesome games.
Can I be clear about something, though? I don't necessarily know. I still wouldn't be comfortable calling SGA the best player in the world. I still think Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world. And I don't necessarily think that the results reflect that SGA is better, but I do think he was better in this series. The reason that I say that is, again, Oklahoma City had the right strategy and game plan selling out on Nikola Jokic, and I think that's why he struggled, and we have to give them credit and their defense credit for what they did. But it's specifically that coverage and all the attention that he got, and the Denver supporting cast and their failure to capitalize off that, I think, is a huge component. Like, I just think most defenses aren't going to be able to do this to Jokic. Oklahoma City's can. And so, like, if we're starting from scratch, I still think I would take Jokic, but I do have to give credit to SGA for also adapting throughout this series. Like, he got better as the series went along. After 3 games, I was disappointed, but the last 4 I thought were phenomenal. And so that's just the distinction that I still want to make. I still think Jokic is top dog to me, but SGA I do think was the best player in this series.
I agree with all of that. I just think that we've gotten such a consistency from Jokic over the last 5 years, honestly, of unparalleled offensive brilliance and dominance in the regular season and postseason. And this year was the best that he's been. This was not his best postseason, but I still think that he definitely has that title as best in the world. His offensive floor is so obscenely high. Our expectations for him are so obscenely high. So I'm not starting that conversation. I don't think SGA has played at a level where he's earned that, because in the Memphis series, he was really inconsistent. Early in this series, he was inconsistent. Like, he hasn't had that sort of signature dominant playoff series end to end. I think you'd need multiple of those for me to really start a serious conversation of him up against Jokic, just because Jokic's resume is so outstanding. We're just talking about this series. And yeah, Jokic has a way more difficult matchup in this series, because even though I thought Denver came with a good scheme, I thought they defended much better in the playoffs than they did in the regular season, much better. Jokic is going up against one of the greatest defenses of all time, and they are overwhelmingly concerned with what do we do with him? How do we give him hell? And if anybody else beats us, so be it. You have to understand all that context. But when we're just talking about this series, I do think that I would give Shai a slight edge. Here are the bottom line numbers. For Shai, 30 points, 6.5 boards, 6.5 assists per game on 63% true shooting. Very impressive efficiency. For Jokic, it's 28, 14, and 6 on 59% true shooting. Of course, he does have the 4.5 turnovers per game, which is a very high number. SGA was incredible taking care of the basketball, just 2 turnovers per game. So although I definitely thought that he had the easier task offensively, he was much more efficient, scored with a little bit more volume. The playmaking impact for Jokic wasn't quite the same as we normally expect, although I also think if his teammates had shot better, he definitely could have averaged, say, 7 assists a game in this series instead of 6. But if we break it down game by game, like you were saying, SGA gives you 4 great games in this one. Game 6 and 7 were outstanding end to end from him. Game 5 The fourth quarter was just so great that I think you grade that as an overall great game. And then game 2, it was obviously a total blowout, but I mean, he was perfect in that game. And even game 1, he was pretty good, but I would have liked to see him be a little better as a decision maker in that one. Now, he really was off in both games 3 and 4, like Jokic, and Jokic was also off in game 2. And Jokic also didn't have his best tonight. So I think overall, Jokic did have the highest highs. Like SGA did not do anything that compares to what Jokic did in game 5. That was one of the best individual performances in a loss that you'll see. And what Jokic did in the fourth quarter of game 1 was really, really incredible as well. But overall, I think that SGA gave you a little bit more consistency in this series.
And I think this is such a huge moment for this Thunder team and for SGA too. Just in terms of the narrative that has been building about this team and what people think. Like, I think there would have been a lot of negative conversations coming out about the Thunder if they had lost this game. And I think it's really, one, I'm just excited for the fan base because I think the Thunder deserved this with how long they were down in the depths, rebuilding, post Westbrook, all that. And they did a phenomenal job rebuilding. So I'm just excited for this young team and just what a big moment this. I mean, this is a huge moment for this young group.
It is.
Like, to go to the Western Conference Finals, but specifically the way they won this game. They dominated the best player in the world with an elite defense. And Carson, you mentioned this, during this series, but like, young teams aren't supposed to win big moments like this. They're not supposed to win convincingly like this. Like, this is such a dominant win for such a young team on a big stage. And I just think that hopefully some of the doubters and some of the skeptics can take this medicine, man. I did pick against them, but I'm ecstatic for them. And this is a big response for them, just in terms of, to the doubters. Again, man, like, they didn't crumble. This young team answered the call. J-Dub was much, much better in this game. The shooting was way better in this game. My man, Kason Wallace, had big moments in this game, had big moments throughout this series, man. I thought Kason was really, really good off the bench for this group, and they just answered the call, man. This is a huge win for this young group and this young team, and
Yep.
It's just massive. I'm really excited for OKC. They're just to be so, I would say, ahead of schedule, but that doesn't even seem right. It seems like this team is right on time.
Yep, they're on schedule. The expectations are just that insanely high because they won 68 games. And what I've consistently said, this is a team that is the best position to start a dynasty and to win a title this young since the 2015 Warriors. I truly think that their talent is that special. Their foundation is that special. And we can talk about this being the era of parity and no team repeating. In fact, no champion in the 2020s going past the second round that as season after they win the title. And I think that there is very good reason to think that it is more difficult to build dynasties and replicate championships than ever before. Depth is so important in today's NBA, and yet it's so hard to maintain with the new CBA.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a core that has the MVP of the league at 26 years old now in Shai. They have, in my opinion, a future top 10, maybe future top 5 player in Chet Holmgren. They have a guy who was already an all-star in Jalen Williams, who I do think is only going to continue to progress. And then they also have so many great young role players who are on really good contracts, like Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, their ability to extend those guys. They have Isaiah Hartenstein under control. They have Alex Caruso under control for some time. Those guys are just the ultimate winning players, and they have so many assets to maneuver and continue to add talent. If anybody's going to dominate the league for the next half decade or maybe even longer, it's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I feel more confident saying that about them than any other team that we've seen since the peak Warriors. This is the biggest win that we've seen from them, obviously, in this iteration of the Thunder. It's so significant to get it done in a Game 7 against the best player in the world, against a team that has won the title before. And it really did take all hands on deck. Well, they won the game by 32. So maybe not everybody needed to ball out, but everybody did ball out. I've already talked about Shai. J-Dub was excellent in this game. And his last 3 performances before this one were inexcusable.
I don't know about excellent.
You don't know about excellent?
I thought excellent.
Really
good. I mean, J-Dub got bailed out of a lot in the early possessions where he's still missing. I wasn't happy with his finishing through like some contested lanes. I thought he got bailed out by some putbacks a little bit. Best game that he's played, I think, or second best game he's played in this series. I thought the 32 piece was probably his best game in this series. Sure. But I mean, I don't want to take anything away from J-Dub because he was excellent in transition. He was excellent defensively, but I was just a little bit disappointed with some of his finishing again in this game. He's got to figure that out, but this was a great J-Dub game.
The finishing was a lot better, though. The driving was a lot better. He knocks down a couple of threes off the catch, which is so significant. He had struggled so much as a jump shooter. He knocks down a couple of his signature mid-range pull-ups. Like, everything that wasn't going for him in games 4 through 6 of this series was going for him in this one. And like I said, the last 3 games for him were embarrassing, and they put OKC in a perilous spot just with how bad he was in game 6 specifically, where they had to come out and close this out in game 7. But I did think some of the discourse with him went too far. He does have his limitations in terms of his ability to create easy offense in a playoff environment, specifically against a really good defense. But he's still a really, really good basketball player. And there were a lot of people who were saying basically he's a fraud. I saw tweets like, J-Dub is the most obvious, the dynasty starts after you player that there is. And I just really didn't like that. Like, I am a J-Dub believer at my core. I'm not going to say that he's not flawed. There are times where I really don't like his shot selection. There are times where, again, you feel like he's struggling to get anything easy, but he's a very good playmaker for his age. He is a 3-level scorer who, when the jumper is going, can give you really good production. Did a nice job floating the offense without SGA in the second half of this year. And what I think sometimes gets lost is, like, this dude is a way better defensive player than offensive player. We always look at second options and we're looking at, what's your offensive production?
100%.
He should have been first team all defense this year. He's one of the 5 best defensive players this regular season on the planet.
Also, I mean, J-Dub is still so young.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Still so young. And I thought he was also great cutting against the zone. In this one, he was great in transition. Like, just a really nice all-around performance from him, which OKC desperately needed. He delivered it. I also thought Chet was good in this one. It's not a stat sheet that's going to wow you, but he was great cutting against the zone, making himself available for lobs.
Especially out of the baseline. I completely agree, because in that stretch that we were talking about early in this game, when the offense was stalled out, that was the easy way that they were getting some buckets. If it was Kason cutting into middle of the zone. And I think Hartenstein and Holmgren are so smart. They just know exactly when to cut when those backline guys step up and can kill them. And because, Denver's a little bit limited defensively, they don't have a rim protector on the floor, because it's Jokic and Gordon. They can't blow up those lobs. Those are going to be there all game long.
And I thought that was one of the biggest things that OKC figured out in the back half of this series. Those baseline cuts against the zone, they just got so much more consistent with those, and they were super effective. I also thought Chet was great on the glass. I thought, as always, he was great defensively. So the big 3 all came through for OKC, and when that happens, they're unbeatable. Because obviously, Denver was never as deep or as talented a team top to bottom as OKC. For them to win, for them to somehow pull this thing out, like, you needed J-Dub clunkers. You needed Chet to look a little bit shaky offensively, and that just wasn't the case in this one. I do want to do a little bit more praising of the collective Thunder team, because I just think you see some of the absolute winners they have coming through in a big way in this one. Isaiah Hartenstein, what an addition he was in the offseason. 4 offensive rebounds, man. I mean, how many of those did he finish with putbacks? At least 2 of them. So he comes in and gives you some really big minutes on the offensive glass. We know what a complete player he is with his touch shot making, with his passing, with his defensive impact. Cason Wallace, as you mentioned, just phenomenal. I mean, truly a uniquely winning player for being as young as he is. This guy is in year 2, and yet he's doing all the right things out there in terms of his defensive versatility, making plays, forcing mistakes, getting out in transition, making the reads as a passer, confidently stepping into threes. He was so big. And then Caruso, we've already talked about, but he could be the X factor, man. I mean, he could be the difference between OKC winning the title this year and not winning it easily. Also, because do they get out of this series without him? I don't know.
We didn't mention, and I hate bringing up the first half again, but I really think it's important just because it was the most competitive part of this game. I mean, Caruso wasn't only just awesome defensively in his minutes, too. I thought he was huge when they got Dort off the floor, just because Dort was clanging a bunch of threes early, and Caruso is the guy that breaks that barrier. They were 0-6 at the beginning of this game before Caruso makes their first 3. Caruso settles this team down, and I think he really gives them that veteran presence that they need. He is a stabilizing, calming force. He's got that presence about him. Him and Hartenstein both, but even more so for Caruso. He's got that championship pedigree. He has played in big games and big moments, and I think it can get overstated sometimes, but I do think that's an important aspect of the value that he brings to this young basketball team.
Yeah, he just knows what it takes to win on both sides of the ball. I mean, he's a defensive genius. His anticipation is one of a kind. His fight, his dog is one of a kind. And then offensively, he knows where to be against the zone. He knows when to time his cuts. He knows how to find the open man. He's comfortable stepping into those threes off the catch. He's great in transition offense. He's great driving and finishing. Those are the kind of players who win you championships, man. And OKC has more of those guys than anybody, and Denver is really lacking them. And I did think that that was very apparent in this game. It's a uniquely great performance by OKC, legitimately, to step up and to be this dominant in game 7. But earlier in the series, to respond after they fumbled away games 1 and game 3 and really struggled in the clutch, and then to come out with clutch wins like they gave you in games 4 and 5. I've said it before with them. I'll say it a million times more. Teams this young do not do this. They don't come out and win games this big. They don't go this deep in the playoffs. It's very special.
I think we've seen growth within this series.
I agree. Let's talk about Denver's side of this, Logan, because as I said, I do think that one of the things that was most apparent in this game is just OKC has so many guys who you trust, who you know are going to bring that high-level impact on both sides of the ball. Denver didn't have those guys.
Yeah, I think it's about finding those guys, and you got to figure out what assets that you really want to keep around, and because it's not a full rebuild, you're not blowing anything up when you've got Jokic and Murray. It's all about retooling around those guys and figuring out what combinations work. Aaron Gordon is safe to me. Props to him for playing through that hamstring injury. I thought it was pretty reckless. We talked a little bit about this just pregame about how dangerous it could be pushing the bill, but I mean, he played so hard. He was rebounding so well, I thought. You know, he gets lost on a few defensive possessions because he's a step slow, but, like, I can't blame the guy. I just want to give him credit for playing through such a serious injury. So Gordon and Murray are locks to me. These are guys that fit with Jokic like gloves. They are perfect complementary assets and the skill sets that they bring. You know, honestly, Carson, I wish Jamal was a little bit better and a little more consistent for the price tag that he's on. But I just
this game was really bad from Jamal.
It
was really bad. And this was a game where they needed him to be huge, especially with the AG injury, with the MPJ inconsistency.
Definitely.
And it was the exact opposite.
I just don't think that Murray's a guy that you can move off of with his proven track record of being a clutch, big-time gamer and tough shot maker. And he really does complement Jokic. And I think conventionally, I do believe he's a playoff riser. So those guys are safe to me, which does leave one odd man out, and he's been the guy that we've been kind of pointing our finger at all season long, and it is Michael Porter Jr. I think that is the next step for this team. And there's three key areas, really, that I would like to see Denver improve in.
Bye-bye, Logan. R.I.P. to Logan. I'll take it from here. Thanks, buddy, for giving me the mic. Here's where I think that things really went wrong for Denver in this series. I've talked about the lack of depth, and then there's two guys who I really do point the finger at, and that's Jamal Murray in this game, and that's Michael Porter Jr., obviously, throughout this series, and he's dealing with the shoulder injury, and so you empathize with him, but nevertheless, I mean, just unacceptable results. Logan, you're back.
I died. I don't know what happened, man. I lagged out.
I'm so glad to see that you're back. Anyways, I was just saying, I think that you really put this series on MPJ's struggles, and he just had a disastrous postseason overall. But also, Jamal, as you said, you need to be more consistent. There were some really high highs. I mean, he had some great performances. You think about what he did in game 5 against the Clippers, just like one of those signature Jamal games. You think about what he did in game 3 of this series. He had some really, really good moments. Thought he was very good in game 6, but he lives on tough shots. And if you really dial up the pressure and you really dial up the physicality, you can give him some trouble. He doesn't really have that high level burst. And sometimes he's just not going to knock down the tough shots. He's a special shot maker, but when you don't get anything easy for yourself night after night, you are always susceptible to volatility. And sadly, it's not surprising at this point that you're getting the roller coaster with Jamal, that he's up and then he's down, even in a huge spot like this. The reality is he's not going to replicate what he did in 2023 ever again, in my opinion. I think you're always going to have sort of this rocky road with Jamal, and he's not going to be worth his price tag. He's not an all-star caliber player. You know, there's a reason this guy has never been an all-star before.
So, I mean,
people mythologize like playoff Jamal Murray, and it was real in the bubble, and it was real in 2023. Last year, he was horrible in the playoffs. This year, he was better. And I think overall, you don't necessarily feel bad about what Jamal gave you unless your expectations were every time once we get to April and May, he's going to become a different player. He didn't become a different player. He had some really good games and some really bad games. And he had a really bad game in game 7.
So to you, is he expensive enough to warrant potentially moving off of for a different player?
I do really like his fit with Jokic. I think their two-man game is still some of the best offense in basketball. I think he's not a great isolation scorer, but he is a great pick and roll scorer. And Jokic is so great at freeing him up, being one of the best screeners in basketball. And if you can get him some space to get to his pull-up jumpers, he's pretty fantastic. I do think he is one of the best clutch scorers in basketball. So I probably wouldn't move off of Jamal. I don't really know how they upgrade that. You're not trading Jamal for a better guard. The other team isn't going to agree to that. So you have to have some quasi-star guard in this mold. I don't think that Jamal is a top 35 player in the NBA, but he's just outside that range. And you need somebody who can be that ball handler, who can give you those scoring infusions with Jokic. And they've committed to Jamal. And I just think he's that guy for them. So I understand frustrations with the inconsistency, and I would share some of them. But I don't think you're moving off of him and finding somebody who is better in that same mold. It's just not going to happen.
I agree, and I think that's why you need to try to find another guy that can help give you some of Jamal's value and his archetype when he's not out there on the floor that can also complement Jokic. That's easier said than done, but that to me is why Michael Porter Jr. is the guy that I'm really willing to shop out. Now, that's not the deal that you're going to make with MPJ. With MPJ, you need to get a 3-and-D wing, emphasis on defense there. Like, I really think you need a guy that can just be impactful there and make shots. And MPJ wasn't even good at making shots this postseason. So I think you're okay with moving off of him. And even though he had a bad series, I think he's still an intriguing asset because teams know that he was struggling with the shoulder injury and that you expect more out of him. It's not going to be super easy trading him, but he's the guy that I would look to flip either into that piece or maybe two lesser players that where you're getting that archetype I was talking about. You know, you break him down into a point guard, shooting guard who can handle for you and run some offense and can make some shots from behind the arc and can run pick and roll with Jokic and a 3-and-D wing. But that's the pivot point to me is MPJ because you got to get off his money to maneuver some things around. Further down this roster, though, you know, I do like Brown on this team. I really like Brown. I thought he had a really good game. I thought he had a really encouraging postseason. I'm not in a hurry to move off of him. I think Brown really works here. And yeah, just improving on the margins, getting more playable players and maybe guys that give you different looks. I think I'd keep Russ too. I'd try to bring Russ back. I think he works here overall. Yeah. You know what you're getting from Russ. You know, I wouldn't count on him to give you great playoff minutes every single night, but he can give you some punch off the bench some nights. I like Peyton Watson. So MPJ is the odd man out. And all of these guys that I'm bringing up too, they're not deal breakers for me to move off of. The only guy that I really wouldn't want to move off of is Jamal. Obviously, Jokic is completely untouchable. You know, you're not moving off of him for anything. Jamal is probably the guy. Jamal and Aaron Gordon are the guys that I really wouldn't want to move off of. Everybody else to me is expendable.
Yeah, I think that Aaron Gordon certainly, he is to me better in
Supreme
his
value
role than Jamal.
For his contract as well.
Absolutely. Just so good. And also, like, for now, at least one more year, you have Christian Brown at supreme value while he's still on that rookie deal. And I do think that this was an up and down postseason for him. I definitely would have liked to see him shoot the ball better from 3 overall. He ends the postseason at just about 30% from deep, and he is so great in transition. He added that dimension to this offense. I did think that his point of attack defense was pretty good overall in the playoffs. I thought his cutting was really good. That shooting, though, man, that's the X factor with him, and it really wasn't good enough in this postseason. So even though I think he deserves praise for this game, and he was one of the few guys who made any threes, he still shot 2 of 9 from deep in this game. That's not good enough in a spot like this. But in terms of where this team is headed, I think that an MPJ trade is absolutely the route because this team is not far away, man. They are not far away. Like, with the level that they were able to defend at in these playoffs, even with personnel that you don't necessarily love on the defensive side of the ball, We know that this offense is going to be one of the best in basketball because they have Jokic, because they have Murray, because they have Aaron Gordon, really because they have Jokic. I mean, just that's something that you're going to count on year after year with him. They have to improve their depth. They have to improve their overall wing group. They have to improve their shooting down the roster. MPJ was terrible in the playoffs. He was horrible as a shooter. And when he's horrible as a shooter, he's just a bad basketball player because he's not consistent in any of the effort or IQ or defensive aspects of the game. His shooting, when he's right and when he's hot, it is special. And that's why he's been such a valuable offensive weapon alongside the Murray Jokic two-man game for years. But he is too dependent on that shooting to be a $40 million player. When if that shot is off, you're like, yeah, I guess we'll close with Russ and we'll see what we can get. Like, he just can't justify the contract.
I think I have an idea for a team who might be interested in his contract, though.
Okay, I have a trade idea for MPJ as well, but go ahead.
Okay, I am sending MPJ along with Zeke Naji and Dario Saric's contract filler to the Orlando Magic for Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, and Goga Batadze.
That's something. I don't know. If I believe that Jonathan Isaac was going to play,
that's the only
more
holdup
than
to me.
30 games.
You're paying him $25 million, and he can probably only give you 20 minutes a night. But
yeah, Cole Anthony also sucks.
Cole Anthony does suck.
And Goga would be nice because he'd be an actual backup center. At the same time, I'm hopeful that Deron Holmes becomes that actual backup center for them next year. I think
as well.
They could probably get more than that for MPJ because realistically, I don't know, man. That's not much.
I just think you need to find a team that is really limited spacing wise and would be willing to give up.
No, for sure.
You know, like
it's interesting from that perspective.
I think you just need to find a partner who's really desperate to find shooting, and Orlando to me is one of those teams.
So this is a modified version of a trade that I proposed a while ago. MPJ, Denver's 2031 first, and a 2028 first round pick swap to Miami for Andrew Wiggins, Haywood Highsmith, and Nikola Jokic. You think that's too steep? Because realistically, Miami's tough to do business with.
I don't know if they're going to give up Jokic. I think Jokic is probably the one that I would. If you cut it off at Wiggins and Highsmith, I think Miami would do it. I don't know if they're going to give up Jokic, though.
You need another contract in there to make the money work at the very least. What if
Davion Mitchell? You think Miami would be willing to part with him?
Well, he's going to get paid this offseason. He's going to have a new contract, so he's probably going to be on a bigger deal.
Hawk is.
Nah, I guess I'd do that, man. I mean, you don't think that draft capital is intriguing enough, and you don't think Miami looks at MPJ and says he's younger than Wiggins, he's the more dynamic offensive talent, we're getting some future assets. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would still prefer what they have.
I don't think you're far away. I just think they really appreciate Jokic and wouldn't want to part ways with him.
I think they do too. That's a trade that for Denver would be a home run, though, in my opinion, because those are the things that you need to prioritize. You need to have, again, more guys who you can put into some of these crunch time lineups who can knock down outside shots, because Christian Braun is very good. But sometimes I would love to be able to put somebody who I think is going to make consistently 37, 38% of his threes. And then once you go past Christian Braun, like let's just say MPJ is off, you don't want to close with him. Then you're looking at Russ, who does some good things for you, but can be very volatile. And then like Peyton Watson, he's 0 for 5 from the field in this game, man. He's just not ready. He's just not the shooter you need him to be. Strother, shout out for his game 6. He was a disaster in this game. He goes 1 for 4 with 2 turnovers. Like, I just still don't think you can count on either of those guys. And I don't think that Denver should be in the business any longer of being like, hey, let's develop these late first round draft picks from the Calvin Booth era. Like, no, you need to be finding guys who can give you quality minutes right now. That entails wing defense. That entails the ability to scramble on the back end, to make plays as a low man when Denver puts 2 on the ball, and just guys who you feel like are grown men who are capable of playing minutes in the playoffs, and you know what you're getting for somewhat on a night-to-night basis. So I don't think they need to shake things up in a major way.
Okay.
I just think MPJ should be gone, and they should prioritize wing defense, depth, and winning basketball players. That's what it takes, man. That's what you lose with KCP. That's what you lose with Bruce Brown. Guys who know how to win basketball games. They didn't have those guys this year.
I've got one more hypothetical I cooked up. You let me know what you think.
All right.
So it's MPJ straight up, sending him to a division rival, sending him to Portland For Denny Avdia, Matisse Thybulle,
I'm already going to
and
stop you.
you
No
don't like
chance.
it.
I mean, Denny's a way better asset than
Yeah,
MPJ.
I agree.
It just couldn't happen. I would love it. Are you kidding me? I think that if Denver could get Denny, they'd throw a party, but it's just not going to happen.
I just think
MPJ,
Denny to me is like the exact player that I would like to sub in here for MPJ.
he would be amazing. I think that Andrew Wiggins is a really good fit because he's a great wing defender. He's a pretty good offensive player. I think he'd look better alongside Jokic because everybody does. And he's on a better contract than MPJ, but he is a little older. So I don't know. Maybe he's a little bit more attainable. Regardless, I think that you feel good about how this season ended if you're Denver. Obviously, not game seven. Game seven was a disaster. But the fact that they got past a tough Clippers team and then they pushed the Thunder to a game seven, like I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is the hardest anybody pushes OKC in this postseason. And when you think about where they were, firing Calvin Booth, firing Michael Malone with 3 games to go in the regular season, they were in a really dark place and they bounced back from that in a very impressive way. They have Nikola Jokic, one of the greatest players ever in the heart of his prime. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's acceptable that the last 2 years for them have only resulted in 2 playoff series wins because it's not. They should be contending year in, year out. At the same time, I think that they were closer this year than you would have thought at the end of the regular season. And that's encouraging. You believe in what Aaron Gordon gives you night after night. You're encouraged overall by this season from Christian Brown. You know what you're getting from Jokic, and you know what you need to prioritize. So go out there and get it done.
Carson, I got one more.
Okay.
And how many picks do the Nuggets have to play with, first round wise?
So not a ton. Their 2031 is the only that they can trade outright. And then they can swap in 2026, 2028, and 2030.
So I think we would take the 2031 first and send this out outright with MPJ. I also think you would have to attach another one of those first rounders to make this happen. I still think the other team says no, but here's the hypothetical. MPJ and 2 first round picks to Sacramento for, and you got to add in Najee and Sarge, but for Levine. For Sacramento, it's basically you get more draft capital for, long term for the Fox trade. The optics, I think, on that are really bad because you're going from Fox to Levine to MPJ, but you are accruing more draft capital. If I'm Denver, I think it's a really good move, though.
I would be a little worried about the front court. I really do think they need to prioritize
I'd be worried about
personnel.
Well, I guess in this hypothetical, you're moving Brown to that 3 spot. You're putting Levine in at the 2. I'm worried about the defense too, but I think that offense would be ridiculous.
Yeah, but my concerns about MPJ aren't offensive. I mean, I understand he wasn't nearly good enough offensively in this run.
I think Levine is really dynamic, and I think he would just open up avenues of offense that MPJ doesn't bring.
I think that the fundamental roster building philosophy for Denver has to be, we trust Jokic to elevate our offense. We need to put good defensive personnel around him, and we need to put good depth around him. So we aren't so overly dependent on an MPJ because we're paying him $40 million a year. So that's not the route that I would prefer to take if I were them. We'll see what MPJ's value is this offseason, but if they are not dangling him out there and if they aren't trying to move off of him, I think that it's a mistake. I understand what his offensive fit can be at its best, and I understand that he was hurt in these playoffs, but it's just too inconsistent, and it's ultimately not what their top priority should be this offseason, in my opinion. And then on the margins, you need De'Ron Holmes to be a rotation caliber backup big, and like you said, if they can retain Russ, they should. They need somebody who can bring them ball handling and bench creation. Russ was really good in his minutes with Jokic overall this year. Of course, he's inconsistent, and he wasn't capable of leading the bench to good results when he was on the floor without Jokic. He struggled a lot more in that role, but as a complement with his ability to pressure the rim and play make and cut and knock down open corner threes, he was a huge, huge upgrade from what Reggie Jackson was last year. So I don't know what Russ's market is going to be. He's got a player option, but it's basically the minimum. So I wouldn't really expect him to take that, but I do think that they should try to bring him back if they can. And just generally, it would be nice if this team had one more ball handler, because I do think that you've seen that limitation exposed in back-to-back playoffs when they go up against these ferocious, super physical teams that bring a ton of ball pressure. Jamal can get overwhelmed.
A guy that can create his own shot too, yeah.
I mean, a guy that can handle the ball. Guy that can beat ball pressure. Jamal can struggle with that. Aaron Gordon isn't the ideal option. And obviously this game, it was really hard for him because of the hammy, but they were just crowding him and pressuring him so much. And he was really, really struggling. Obviously Christian Brown doesn't do that. That's something that in an ideal world, I would like to see this Denver team have. We got some super chats, Logan, that I want to get to. Eli says, I previously asked what team is Jalen Williams playing for next season. He's playing for OKC. Rah. I agree.
Damn right.
Write it out, baby.
J-Dub
Believe in your core.
J-Dub was always playing for OKC, man. I do want to give him credit, even though the points were ugly, and that's obviously the bottom line and the most important. I did think J-Dub's impact always extends past buckets. But, I mean, he was bad in the first 6 games. I mean, he's sub 35% from the field coming into Game 7, sub 23% from behind the arc, sub 50% true shooting. But shout out to him for stepping up in Game 7, man. He answered the call. And he's got to be – I'm hopeful that J-Dub's going to carry that into next series, too, because they're going to need him.
My philosophy has always been like a lot of people are too hasty to try to blow up the core three for OKC. I'm very much in favor of them being aggressive for like guys who they can move future draft capital for, guys who they can move one of their depth pieces for, like Cam Johnson. The trade deadline, I thought they should have made that move to just put them over the top. Denny last offseason, I was very in favor of them trying to go out there and get. That's very different from moving off of J-Dub or Chet. That's basically a non-starter for me. Chet is a non-starter. I'm not trading Chet in any world. J-Dub, I don't think is as good as Chet. I don't think his ceiling is as high as Chet, but I still think that when you have a player this good, this young, and you have a very good chance to win the title this young. Yeah, exactly.
And they all work together too. It's not like they don't complement one another. I think it's a really great hierarchy that OKC's got.
I tend to agree. Nahom says, not sure this Thunder team is better than Indy.
They are. Way better.
They are. Indy is phenomenal. Indy is the best offense in the playoff field. That being said, this is the best defense we've seen in a long, long time. Everybody is going to struggle to score the ball against OKC. That even includes the Pacers. And when OKC's offense is going, they have a very high ceiling. And Shai is playing at a level right now that is so extremely high that if the guys around him are just capable as shooters, I do struggle to see anybody beating the Thunder. The rest of the way, Indy Merchant Sam says, congrats to OKC. They got the title. I'm not ready to say it's locked up. I do think they're an odds-on favorite, though. Like, would you say it's more than 50% that OKC wins the title? Because I would.
Yeah, they're my favorite, too. I think that's I wouldn't go much higher than that, but I would.
Yeah, I think that Minnesota is dangerous. I think that Indiana is dangerous. But I think that, again, OKC is going to disrupt every offense they face, and I think that their offense – and Shai specifically is playing well enough that they're going to be extremely difficult to beat. Amadou says, looks like J-Dub doesn't have to look for condos in Milwaukee after all. No, man. Be patient. You got to be patient with young players. It doesn't excuse what J-Dub did over the last few games, but it does feel like he can be a bit of a punching bag. I don't know. Like, did he get enough credit for what he did against Memphis? I get it. They were always going to win that series, but when Shai was off, he picked up the slack. He was outstanding defensively. He was their best player in that series. And then once he struggles, everybody is piling on him. I understand it, again, because the stakes are so much higher and it was inexcusable. But some of the big picture stuff with him, I just think people can take too far at times. Do you want to talk at all about the officiating in this game, Logan? I know there's a lot of Denver fans who are upset.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. Like, I definitely think a physical environment favors a team like Oklahoma City because they play harder. They play more physical on a nightly basis. Personally, I have been very, very happy at the level that the refs have let these guys play. I get really, really irritated when I'm watching a basketball game and they're just blowing the whistle a bunch. And I think physicality just favors whoever's the more physical team. I just think is going to benefit from refs letting them go. And I thought early in this game, I thought Denver did a really good job of weaponizing that physicality and getting downhill and drawing fouls. But late in this game, Oklahoma City was the more physical team. So me personally, I have no issue with the refs. I think I've liked, for the most part, how they've called these games and the level of physicality they've allowed these teams to play with.
I tend to agree. Like, I think that OKC was clearly extremely physical with Jokic. I think that there were plenty of possessions where Caruso was jostling with him for position, where you call a foul in the regular season, But I think if you look at the level of physicality that has been allowed in these playoffs, if you look at what Houston was allowed to do to Steph off ball, if you look at how like Karl Anthony Towns has been guarded, just thinking about another post up player, another big, like this is playoff basketball. And refs are allowing a ton of physicality. And also, like, Jokic shot 11 free throws in the first half. And it's allowed to be reciprocal. Like, if you watch these possessions and you're only watching either guy, you'll be like, hey, he's fouling him. You can do the same thing with Jokic jostling against Caruso, where he's got two hands on him. He's allowed to do a ton of pulling and tugging. And it's not like he got called for a single offensive foul in this game. They're allowing mutual physicality. And I don't know. I also see people be like, OKC's allowed to do whatever they want to Denver, and Denver can't breathe on them. And it's like, yeah, OKC's being allowed to play very physical defensively. But the flip side of that is crazy. Like in the first half of this game, OKC had double the points in the paint and less than a third of the free throws. Denver shot comfortably more free throws than OKC in this series. So I don't really understand the whining there. It's playoff basketball. It's super physical. It has been across the board. The team that sets the tone physically is going to be the beneficiary. And OKC brought the physicality in a big way. And ironically, that's something a lot of people were like, oh, they'll struggle with. Because I think people underestimate them because they look at them and they're not the biggest team physically.
Yeah. I mean, if you've been watching this team all year, though, I mean, that's their identity. It's the biggest part of their identity.
100%, man. It's that defense, and physicality is a big part of that. They very much set the tone on that end.
They're brilliant. This team is so smart. They're so interconnected. And that's their superpower. You know, SGA is the MVP. SGA was the best player in this series. The OKC superpower is that defense, man.
Speaking of which, I put out a poll to see what the people had to say on who was the best player in this series. 61% SGA, 39% Jokic. That seems like an appropriate differential to me. Like, it was very close, but I do think that you give SGA the edge overall. I do look at the rest of this field. I do think that OKC is going to win the title, and I was kind of on the side of whoever wins this series, I was probably going to favor. Now, the AG injury certainly changed things there. And you do have to give that guy credit for playing with a grade 2 hamstring strain. I mean, I was scared. I didn't want to see him out there on the court. I didn't think it was a wise decision. I thought he managed it well. Thought he was active on the glass. I thought it was very impressive, just the heart that he was able to give for this Denver team. But this felt much bigger than a second round series. I mean, this felt like two heavyweights clashing, Denver with their experience, OKC with their raw talent. And it ends up being OKC is the team that figures it out. They have the couple blowout wins. We knew that was always going to be their advantage in this series, that ability to pull away and just bludgeon the team opposite them in a way that nobody else in basketball can replicate. That's what they got done in this one. And I'm excited to see how much more they can do that in these playoffs. We do have one more super chat from Ali. Looking cute, fellas, or Ali. I can't tell. Thank you very much. Jokic needed to bring the ball up way more. Do you think whoever the new GM is will value anyone not named Jokic? I see what you're saying with Jokic bringing the ball up because you think that's a way to counter the fronting, right? We've talked about that where we saw this with Sacramento and we saw this with LA and we saw this with Boston the regular season. They're aggressively fronting Jokic. They're doubling him when he doesn't even have the ball. And so the best way to counter that is just have Jokic bring the ball up the floor. He already has the ball. You have him run inverted pick and roll. He's so good at that. I don't know how effective that would have been. I would worry about the ball pressure and the activity of the hands of a Caruso still. I think there probably still would have been some turnovers, but I don't disagree. I could have liked to see Denver go to that more as a counter, at least to try something new because they were struggling so much to even get Jokic the ball. What do you think? Will the new GM value anyone other than Jokic? Also, I want to talk about if David Adelman is the coach for this team, what you think about that, if he'll be back.
I mean, nothing would be off the table to me if I was the general manager. Obviously, there would be things that I wouldn't want to do or blow up, but I mean, there wouldn't be an offer that I wouldn't consider if a team made. Like, I'm considering everything. I just think you have to consider everything when you've got a player as special as Nikola Jokic. I think you have to consider everything and consider every move on the table that could help you pivot. Like, the guy I will use is the former Nuggets GM, Tim Connolly. I thought he was a fool for trading for Gobert. I thought he was a fool for trading for Julius Randle. What do I know? They're back in the Western Conference Finals. It's like Tim Connolly put his nuts on the table and said, I'm going to be bold. I think this is the best move for the future of our franchise. And he went out and did it. And I think you need to be – I don't think you should be afraid of making big moves or taking big swings because that's what it's going to take to win in this league. And so will they? I think they should value certain players. I would really highly value Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon, but I would consider everything. And I do think Adelman is the coach of this team. I think for the most part, I liked what Adelman gave them
Yeah.
in these playoffs. The the little tiny stuff that we talked about, the non-Murray, non-Jokic, that's small, but I thought the collective fight that we got for this team, the effort, I thought it reflected a team that was engaged and was battling and fighting for this coach. And obviously, Game 7's disappointing, but I liked what we got from Adelman on the whole, and I think he is this team's coach of the future.
I tend to agree. Like you said, I mean, his ability to rally the team when they were in such a precarious spot and get them to play their best basketball of the year in the playoffs, that's really significant. And I thought that, like, schematically, he did some really good stuff going to the zone. Obviously, we can talk about the 5 minutes in the playoffs that he played the non-Murray and Jokic lineups, and that was bad, but that's 5 minutes out of the playoffs. I think overall he earned this job. And it's ultimately going to come down to, what does Jokic want, honestly? Like, what do the players want in general? And my feeling is that they'll probably want him back. In terms of is anybody around Jokic untouchable? We already talked about this a bit, but I'd really like to keep Aaron Gordon. I don't think they're going to be able to really find an upgrade for Jamal. MPJ is the guy who I look at. Obviously, if you could get off of Zeke Naji, that would be a miracle. But what I would say is Denver's window is not over. The window with this exact big four maybe is over. They still got really close against OKC with MPJ not healthy and with Aaron Gordon not healthy at the end of the series. But, you know, there's been people all year trying to draw parallels between them and like the Bucks. And the situations have just never been comparable. Denver's core is younger. Denver's core is better. Denver has more chips to play. Denver has more stops to still pull out. And if they can nail an MPJ trade and they can add the defense and they can add the depth on the wings and in the front court that we're talking about, and they can add some shooting, then I think that they could be one of the front runners for the title next year. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to surpass OKC just because OKC has so much talent and they have it under control, and they're probably just going to keep getting better as some of these young guys continue to improve. But to have a puncher's chance, I think that Denver absolutely is going to be in the mix if they handle this offseason correctly. And even if they're stagnant, you know, I mean, they have the Jokic factor. We saw that they were able to get close in this series, but I would very much like to see them be aggressive. I think that they've lost too much experienced role player talent over the last couple of years. They were too reliant on developing young draft picks. That was a bad strategy. I think that it put them back a couple years when they should have been contending, but I still think that they have time to correct that. And I still think that there's an opportunity for them to go out there and win another title in the Jokic era. Like, it's difficult to do, but we've seen this era of parity. Injury luck breaks your way. You have the best player in the world factor, and they should know what they have to do to improve this roster. On that note, Logan, we are done with one of the most fun playoff series in recent years, my favorite playoff series of this year so far. It's a bummer that we didn't get a banger to go out with in Game 7, but this was a hell of a journey overall. We're going to be back tomorrow, not live.
We got another super chat.
Oh, thank you, Logan.
They're trying to spoil tomorrow's show, bruh.
You eagle-eyed fellow. Boricua says, I think Minnesota is going to give SGA. Boricua, thank you, Logan. Is going to give SGA many problems, and I can see Gobert having a monster series defensively. Minnesota in 6. What say you, OKC in 6? You'll have to find out tomorrow, my friend. I hate to do you like that, but you'll have to find out tomorrow. No, I'll say I'm going to pick OKC to win this series. I'll pick OKC in 6. We won't talk about the details now, but that's going to be my prediction.
I'm going to take OKC in 7.
Okay. All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. We will preview it in depth tomorrow. And of course, we will be back once these games get started Tuesday. Only one day of rest for OKC is pretty gnarly. Meanwhile, the Knicks and Pacers both get tons of rest, kind of a weird scheduling thing. But Tuesday, we have the Western Conference Finals starting. Wednesday, we have the Eastern Conference Finals starting. So we will be back with our live streams, of course. Then you can find them all on our YouTube channel. Join us post-game. You can watch them back after the fact. And you can listen to all of our full episodes across all audio platforms. You can also check us out across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh. And you can join our Discord if you want to chat with the gang there and be part of our community. And with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.